Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today we're talking about episode 2 of Creepshow on Shudder. So as you saw in my first review, I am absolutely loving this series so far. It really takes me back to the original film, how much I loved that as a kid. And yeah, I just love being back in this universe. I love that they've taken this franchise and they've rebooted it in such a faithful way, which is just really wholesome for horror fans, and so far I love it. So in this episode, we have two short stories again. So the first one, Bad Wolf Down, is directed by Rob Schrab, who has a background in comedy, has a background in working in comic books, and you can really feel that in this episode. I love how Creepshow uses the comic book format of flipping with transition, showing the comic book panels. It's coming in and out of stories. You know, at the end of the day, Creepshow is there to replicate old horror comic books. And you can tell this director leans into that. He knows what it is, and he uses different comic elements in the episode. Now, while all the episodes have had the comic panels, this one actually had a really interesting use of making the shots look like comic book. There's moments when the werewolves are attacking the Nazis, and you have these flashing comic panel looks to it, the streaks on them, almost like an old comic book movie, like something like Batman would have. I like how this show seems to know where its shortcomings are and where the production isn't going to be quite as good. And they use things like that to cover up some of the costuming, some of the graphic elements that maybe if the budget were a little bit higher, they wouldn't have to do that. But the fact that they use, this red filter with the flashing that looks like a comic book, or there's also a really cool scene that I thought was really well done when the Nazi officer is seeing his son dead on the stretcher, and they kind of zoom in on him, and the color of the whole thing changes. It has like a neon look to it. I thought that looked really cool, and I thought it was a really good use of lighting in this episode. And speaking of the werewolves, I thought that the costuming was excellent. I loved it. It reminded me of Dog Soldiers, if you saw that film. This episode reminded me if you combined Overlord with Dog Soldiers and made it 20 minutes long. I loved it. I think it really got to what it needed to be. It does go crazy over the top, and that's something that I think we're going to see with these different stories. You're going to have a little more grounded, a little more realism, with a little bit more to say, or you're going to have ones like this. They're just your gore fest. You have creatures attacking Nazis. I mean, what is better than werewolves attacking Nazis? I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect combination. And I thought the writing was kind of interesting on this too. It wasn't super generic. You could have just thrown it in there and had some werewolves attacking Nazis, but you have a group of soldiers who kind of is totally screwed, and they decide that they're going to turn themselves into werewolves so that they can defeat the enemy. I thought that was a little creative and a little original. So I thought the first portion of the episode was really, really solid. I liked it. It kind of is your classic horror monster episode. A lot of decapitations, a lot of blood and gore, which is handled really well. Covered up some of the blemishes with the filters and the stylization. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed that one. I have to say, I really, really liked the finger. I didn't know what was going on when it started. You have this fourth wall break. You have a character who's down on his luck. He's kind of just like an outcast. And I was like, where is this story going to go? I knew this one being directed by Greg Nicotero was going to have some really good practical effects. And man, it had some excellent ones. The creature whose name is Bob reminded me so much of the original Alien. When you see the little tiny alien chest burster jump out and run around, it looked like a little alien. And when I was talking about earlier where the show knows where it has its difficulties and tries to cover it up, it does a really good job of that with Bob in this one. When the actual puppet is up on screen, it looks really good. But when they have to have it move around or run, they have it out of focus or it's very quick. You don't see the fact that it's CGI because, at the end of the day, this show may not have the biggest budget in the world, but when it has such a creative force behind it, they're able to make these practical effects look so excellent that maybe the CGI ones will be brushed aside or kind of hidden behind the scenes because the strength of this show is someone like Greg Nicotero who's able to take these practical effects and make them just look excellent. And the actor who plays the main character, DJ Qualls, I thought did a really good job. You probably remember him, at least I do, from those early 2000s cheesy comedies like The New Guy or Road Trip. But he's an actor that I don't think gets enough credit. I feel like everyone thinks of him as this goofy, awkward guy, but he was really good in Hustle and Flow if you saw that. I also thought he was good in his spots in Supernatural, and he has some really good comedic timing. And I think he really made this episode. Because one of the things that I love about horror is how well it can complement comedy. When you take something so horrible and graphic and mix it with comedic elements, it's just a natural blend for some reason. It's like these polar opposite things, when they put them together, it just is great. And this episode is definitely an example of that. Having Bob be like his little buddy, his little pet, that just wants to make him happy, and he goes out as murdering people for him, and just how upset he is when he loses Bob. I thought there were some little heartfelt moments in this that were so comedic. I thought the narration by the main character was also very well written. The writing used to kind of portray him as just a guy who's just, you really feel bad for him, and his life is just horrible, and he's kind of got this lucky break dealing with this creature. it's just endearing in a way, in like a weird morbid way. It's really endearing seeing these two characters. And I have to say, I love when you use practical effects, specifically puppets. I feel like it gives the character a little more personality. It gives it a little bit more of a tangibility. When you see a CG creature, most of the time this is not real. You're looking at it, it doesn't feel like it's in the scene. It doesn't feel like it's there, and it has no real personality. But seeing this little puppet had more personality than half of the CG stuff that I see in blockbuster films. And this episode has an absolute ton of gore. If you're into gore, this episode has it for you. There's a lot of dismemberments. There's a lot of just body parts smashing, blood all over the place, totally over the top. But like I said, that mixed with the comedy elements makes it a lot more palatable. And I thought that it worked really well. Like I said, the comedic elements were actually really funny in this one. There's especially the moment where the little puppet's sitting there eating the popcorn. It's just hilarious seeing a creature that is a straight up murdering monster, like a little horrible monster. But then he's kind of just sitting there and he's eating his popcorn watching soap operas. I don't know. I just love it. I love the juxtaposition between graphic in-your-face horror and laugh-out-loud comedy. So again, I think this is another excellent story. I just love Creepshow so far. It might be my favorite show I'm watching right now, and I'm watching a lot of shows. So I just feel like if you are a big horror fan and you love the original Creepshow, and you want to get back into it, you know, it's been a while since we've had a Creepshow. So if you want to see it, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Maybe get a trial of Shudder, see if you enjoy it. I'm personally hooked. I watched the first episode, and I'm going to keep Shudder as long as Creepshow's on there. And if they keep putting out great content like this, I may never get rid of it. All right, guys, let me know what you thought about this episode of Creepshow. Are you still on board with me? What's been your favorite one so far? I think for me, it is definitely between The Finger and Gray Matter. I love both of those short stories, so let me know what your favorite is. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you next time.